We're told in this chapter, in no uncertain terms, that you, him, her, me, do not have physical bodies. This is the statement made to us throughout the chapter. There can be no mistaking it. There can be no dodging it. There can be no pretending it isn't being said. A finger is pointing at each of us and saying, I am demanding of you to consider the truth of your being, that you do not have a physical body. And I'd like to put that decision off a little longer, a few years, maybe a few months, even a few days, but I wouldn't like to face it this very minute. But it says, no, you must face it. Here it is. You have no physical body. So I start to squirm. I can find all kinds of reasons that indicate that I have one. And so I begin to say, but, what about this and what about that? And relentlessly the fact confronts me that God is Spirit. God is my Father, and Spirit begets itself. If I wish to insist on having a physical body, I must renounce the fatherhood of God. Well, what about this physical body? Where can I put it? I can't hang it up in the closet. It isn't a suit of clothes. It isn't a dress. You can't fold it like a shirt and put it in a dresser drawer. Where can I put this physical body that I do not have? And then again confronting me is the fact that I am not accepting that I do not have a physical body. Because if I want to put it somewhere, I have an it to put somewhere. And then comes a very sweeping understanding. Why don't you, instead of arguing the point, instead of trying to find reasons why you don't have one, why don't you try accepting that you don't have one, just as simply as all that? In a flat, total, complete acceptance, I do not have a physical body. And so we try that. It doesn't seem to hurt very much. And now we're wondering, what's the next step? Well, if you don't have a physical body, how can you have physical needs? Isn't a physical need that which you consider the need of the physical body that you do not have? Yes, that would be true. Therefore, I must go further and say within myself, if I have no physical body, I have no physical needs. And of course, the mind rebels and squirms again, but I'm keeping it under control momentarily and accepting the words of the chapter. I have no physical body, and therefore I have no physical needs. And as I continue doing this, I realize that in my human life, I have been trying to fit a round peg into a square hole. I've been trying to live in the kingdom of God in a physical body, in a mortal body. And I know that the immortal Father made no mortal bodies. And so by trying to live in a physical body, I have been living in that which I do not have, and I cannot walk in the kingdom of God. I am what the Bible calls dead, asleep, and I must awaken. I must awaken to the fact that in a physical body I can never know God. In a physical body I cannot receive the gifts of God. And then some beautiful thought comes through, well, why don't you go looking for another body then? If they tell you you have no physical body, you must have another one. You don't have one to give up. You have a concept to give up. And you have a real body. There must be a body somewhere. That is my body, if this one isn't. Is there such a body which was not made in the womb, which was not fashioned by the union of two people? Is there such a body? Is there a body not made with hands? I'm told that is my body. Then I see this empty tomb. And there was a man who had a body, and they put it in that tomb. Now it's not there. He is risen. The body isn't there. Well, he had a body. We all saw it, and everyone who was there saw that body. Where is it? And then we realize what he was teaching us. He didn't have a body. That was an image. That was the same kind of an image that our body is. And then we realize it could disappear from that tomb because it was only an image. There's no other way it could have disappeared except that it was not there in the first place. An image disappeared. Ultimately, we will accept that an image disappeared, not a body, but an image of a body, a mental concept of a body entertained by the world, but not by him himself. Now, if we accept that the image disappeared, let's go back to the physical form of the one before he was put into the tomb. What we have accepted to be the disappearance of an image, we now look at, and there's that image. And it looks just like a physical body. And let's trace him as he walks through the Holy Land. There's that image, and it looks just like a body. And he must have known it. It was only an image. Destroy it, and in 3 days I will raise it up again. And then those words take a ring you never dreamed of. Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up again. Oh, we like to think those words applied to Jesus in the Holy Land, who said, destroy this temple. But that isn't where it happened. The eye of you is saying, destroy this temple. Destroy this concept called physical body. That's what it's been saying all these years. Destroy this temple. Destroy this body concept. Destroy this image in your mind. Do not live in it. And in 3 days, I will raise it up again. Those words were directed to everyone who sees them, to step out of the body image into that body which was not fashioned in the womb, which was not made by hands, that body which is the body of Christ. And there is such a body. And I cannot walk in that body consciously until I step out of the one I thought I had. But with the human mind, I cannot do this. The human mind is the channel through which the body appears. And as long as I am glued to the human mind, I am glued to the physical form that God did not make. The human mind sees the human body. The Christ mind sees the Christ body. The human body is not I. Now, I cannot reason it any further because I'll have to use the human reasoning power, and it will not work. I must do what Paul said. We walk by faith. We cannot walk out of this body by reason or logic. We can only walk out of it by faith. We walk out of the concept. We are told that we have dominion. Well, there's no dominion in being under a tombstone. We are told that we have dominion. There's no dominion in being sick. There's no dominion in getting older every day. That's not dominion. That's accepting the physical body as body. It's not accepting the immortal body. It's not accepting that body which is the Christ body. It's an unwillingness to accept the Master's teaching, which keeps us earth-bound, disease-bound, age-bound, dying-bound, mortality-bound, in bodies of clay that never were created by God. Now, you know God has no hands and feet. You know God has no eyes and ears. You know God has no glands. God has no bloodstream. God doesn't have hair growing on his head. We begin to catch the illusion of the mental concepts which are all struggling to establish some kind of interpretation of the immortal body of the soul. We begin to see why it is called a mental concept. It's really billions of concepts all rolled into one. There was a man named Nikola Tesla. He was capable of doing some very strange things. One of them was that in his own higher sense of self, he could build a laboratory in the invisible. And there in the invisible laboratory, he could devise all kinds of experiments, and whatever he thought of appeared to him in the invisible, and it had density. It had form. It had size and shape. It was an instantaneous thing. He could even file these inventions away until he wanted them. 5 years later, he could come back inside himself to the laboratory which he had established in the invisible and find sizes and shapes and dimensions of the things he had invented there 5 years before. And of course science didn't like him too well because their methods were outmoded for him. Now this ability to see into the invisible instantly as form would seem to be very advanced. Many people would desire to have that capacity. Now remember, as he thought of an object, it appeared to him, and it is said to have appeared in what is called the fourth ether, outside the visible realm, visible to no one but himself. And this capacity to materialize in the invisible that which he thought of, being such an unusual quality, it would seem to be very advanced for this age. Now, I want you to see that it is an imitation quality. I want you to see that that is exactly how your body image was made. There was a thinker, and that thinker materialized a form. And that thinker was not you. Just as Tesla, the electrical genius, saw forms in his higher consciousness that materialized there, out of essence, out of cosmic energy, so there is a cosmic mind which has materialized the forms we walk in. It's an automatic thing. It's a continuous process until death. It begins every time a baby appears. It continues all through the so-called lifespan, and all of this is the materialization of a cosmic mind. It isn't a body, it's a body image in that cosmic mind. We have called these body images our bodies. But they are images about our bodies. They are concepts about our immortal body. And that immortal body did not go through the pangs of birth, is not aging, is not subject to disease, is not subject to dying. And that immortal body has dominion. That is where our dominion lies, in the capacity to see the body as an image created by a cosmic mind for a purpose, working itself through what we call our human consciousness, then appearing as form, but only to show us the degree to which we have attained awareness about the true self. Between the immortal body and the visible body of form is our consciousness. And as we expand our awareness of the immortal body, that consciousness of it manifests in the visible form, in the visible body image. No longer do we say, I am this body, but rather I am this body image formed by my consciousness about my true self, which is the immortal body. And that which I am is the immortal body, made visible only in this limited fashion by a limited consciousness. As I am able to attain more of the Christ mind, which can translate the immortal body in fullness, then this outer body image will reflect the gifts of the Father, the truth of Christ being. And then lo and behold, this leads to that great miracle so little understood. The Immaculate Conception. The Immaculate Conception is the full realization of your immortal body. It isn't a child born in Bethlehem. It is that moment when you have completed your first major initiation. Actually, the very mission on earth, to step out of the body image into the immortal body, is the Immaculate Self-Conception. And this we are all going to do. For this is the meaning of the Father's statement, be ye perfect. In the process of doing this, we pick many parents. We incarnate through the soul in this body image, always maintaining a higher level, if possible, of interpretation until we come to the place where we're willing to destroy this temple. Lay it aside, no longer needing it, knowing that it will follow like a shadow to whatever I do in my immortal body. The emphasis is no longer on living in the body image, but in the immortal body, and letting the shadow of it fall as a visible body image. So we again look at Jesus walking not in the body image, walking in the immortal body. And we, looking at his immortal body, see the body image. And then he shows us, you see, you're only looking at an image because I have taken the image away. I'm not here in this tomb. Now retrace your steps and watch me and realize you're looking at an image. And to make us know it's an image, he has things happen which do not happen in his body, but happen external to that body. And when they happen external to that body, they are still happening within his immortal body, which is larger than his image body. So that when there is a healing external to his body in someone else, that healing is taking place within his larger, infinite, immortal body. The action of Christ is always taking place in the immortal body. And though it appears to us in the visible as in another person's body, it is always happening in the Christ body, the infinite body. We are seeing many forms within that one infinite body, but everything is happening in the Christ body. There is no other body. Now he says, in 3 days I will raise it up again. And this is the I in you saying that when you are able to lay aside your concept of the body image, in 3 degrees, I, in the midst of you, will take you into the realization of your real body. In other words, Scripture is trying to tell us that we must find our permanent self, not live in a body which must corrupt. Scripture is telling us that when you find your permanent self preceding the death of the mortal body, you will have completed your initiation on this earth. You too will step out of the image or tomb and live in the divine image. Now we say, all right, I do want to find and live in my permanent self, in my immortal body. But where is it? And how do I make the transition from a body image and all of the contingent ideas of heredity which I have carried so long into living, actually living, not talking about, but living in my immortal body? How is this to be consummated? Well, we know that you cannot do it by reading about it. You cannot do it except by actually walking out upon the water, accepting the immortal body to be present where you are. What did he mean when he said, the kingdom of God is within you? He meant that you have an immortal body and an immortal mind. Now, if you think you have a physical body to step out of, in order to walk into this immortal body, you make the mistake of thinking that matter can be converted into spirit. It comes down to a simple recognition that there's no physical body to step out of. There must be that realization. You cannot step out of what you do not have. You have an image. You don't step out of it. You recognize it for what it is. And right where you're standing is your immortal body, which is invisible to the five senses, which know only the mortal sense of body. Now then, we're in our immortal body now. That is the Christ body. And in order to experience it, to receive the glory of it, we must consciously be willing not to walk in the body that we do not have. It's not only impossible, but it would be nothing more than a continuation of the dream. And ultimately, that which we do not have will be revealed as never having been there. Our permanent self, lived in now, consciously knowing that I have an invisible body here and now, is the beginning of the first few steps into acceptance. Now, if I have an invisible body here now which is immortal, I must go into that temple of my mind and cleanse it. Because we know the body is nothing more than the mind made visible. So with the Christ body, it is the Christ mind manifested. And I must go into my temple now of the mind. In order to improve my understanding of body, I must cleanse the temple. I have so many money changes there, so many concepts about things that are untrue, and one of the greatest lies in the temple of my mind is the belief that I live in time, and that in time I can age. The moment I believe I can age, even for a moment, even for a second, I have not cleansed the temple properly. It is impossible for me to age. That is a human belief. That is a belief when I look at a human body and I am fooled by an image which never was myself. Now I must banish the thought that age is possible. I must banish the thought that sickness is possible. Why? Because they do not happen in the immortal body. And so as long as I continue to accept the possibilities of age and sickness and death, I am rejecting my immortal body. You cannot experience it unless you cleanse the temple. And so every thought which pertains to a mortal body must be cleansed. Briskly we sweep out all thoughts that pertain to mortal bodies. Now I have no capacity to live in my immortal body if I live in passing time. And so I must get rid of the idea that there's going to be any tomorrow. There are no tomorrows for the immortal body. Tomorrow would be impossible in eternity, and the immortal body lives now here in eternity, in the kingdom of God. I am in that body which is a now body. Every tomorrow that I experience is only in a human body, in a body image. And as long as I am going to have a tomorrow, I'm back in that mortal body that knows not the Father. Now you have no tomorrows in this immortal body, no yesterdays, no aging, no sickness, no disease, no problems, no growing up process, and no process of degenerating either. Always perfection is the law of your immortal body. And that's where you dwell. Now, it has to have a size and a shape humanly. But where is this immortal body if we are all joint heirs in Christ? Where does the Christ body begin and end? Now this is very important. You remain in a mortal concept called body as long as you reject that your immortal body is infinite. You cannot have a finite immortal body. You can only have an infinite immortal body. And that immortal body, that is your body, is the invisible universe. There's no in-between. The infinite, invisible universe is your body. It is your immortal body. And you literally must live in it consciously. Or you live in a finite, mortal body, which is a concept, and which is subject to the powers of other concepts all over the earth. Now it is important then to see that the full scope of your real life is as the universal immortal body. And truly you must live in it consciously in order to experience the fruitage of it. And that means wherever you look, invisibly is your body. You've been practicing, there I am, and now there the I that I am is my invisible body, right there. Everywhere is your invisible body. You don't have a neighbor. Your invisible self is your neighbor, and that is your immortal body, invisible, right there. Everything you're seeing in this world is a concept about your invisible, immortal body. And because your invisible, immortal body is perfect, you're not troubled by the concepts. Your temple, not made with hands, which cannot be crucified and cannot die, and does not age and is never diseased, is your infinite immortal body, which is the kingdom of God. When they spoke of the Garden of Eden, they were speaking of your infinite immortal body. And you see, just as Adam and Eve walked within their infinite immortal body unaware of it, thinking they were in the Garden of Eden, so do we, thinking we are in the world. But we're not. We are that infinite body. And it is important to see why it must be infinite, and that is why Jesus had absent healings, to show that the activity of Christ external to the form was only possible because he was in the consciousness of something larger than the form. If the healing was 200 miles away, it was because the immortal body was also 200 miles away. You are always in your own immortal body everywhere. Even if you think you're healing someone 200 miles away, that is your immortal body there. And your acknowledgement and recognition of it, your conscious awareness of it, means that you're really self-healing, aren't you? You're never healing anyone. You're merely recognizing the truth of your being everywhere. Thou seest me, thou seest the Father. When you see that which you call Jesus, you're looking at the immortal body of God. Why? Because the one called Jesus has accepted that myself is not this physical form called Jesus, but rather the immortal, infinite body. The same is true of everyone who hears my voice. My sheep hear my voice. They too will pick up their cross. They will deny themselves. They will deny the images they have called bodies. They will cross out that image in their consciousness, picking up their cross, accepting their immortal bodies. And then they will be true to those immortal bodies. They will follow through, living in those immortal bodies as the one infinite body. And this must precede death. It must precede that moment when the mortal body is no more. And this is the entire earth initiation. Coming into the awareness through my own immaculate self-conception that the immortal body of God is my body, here and now, and this is holy ground. And now I care not when mortality ends, because I am not in mortality. I care not when the body image is confiscated, because I am not waiting for death in order to make the experience of resurrection and ascension, but rather we are the resurrection before the death of the body image. We are ascended before mortality is ended. And this, we find, is the destiny of all those who walk this earth in body images. At present, the image you call body represents the level of your consciousness, the degree to which you have attained an awareness of your true self. As your awareness diminishes, the body shows forth the consequences. As your awareness increases, the body shows forth more harmony. As you know more truth of yourself, the body reflects that truth in a great measure, always giving you a perfect scorecard about the degree to which you are attaining or losing the awareness of truth. It is your perfect gauge. And it is an instantaneous gauge. It is an infallible gauge. Every ache and pain is saying to you that you're not living in your true body, because in your true body here and now you could be perfect as your Father which is in heaven. Now, I didn't want to face this. Something in me wanted to postpone it. Something in me has been wanting to postpone this for more years than I care to say. And even tomorrow and the next day, something will say, well, what's the hurry? And the hurry is that we must work by day because night comes when no man can work. And the Master has made it clear. The Son of God has no place where to lay his head. He's not mortal. He's immortal. He cannot lay his head in the visible. He doesn't even have a head to lay. Now then, again, there's a separation here from those who are willing to continue fighting the fact that the mortal body is not their real body. And then there are those who will say, well, even so, even if it isn't, I don't mind incarnating again, or 100 more times if necessary. And besides, won't nature just take care of things? Well, there seems to be an indication that nature doesn't just take care of things. We are told very forcibly, choose ye. We are commanded to be pure at heart. We are told that unless we are able to die to our false sense of life, we cannot walk in the kingdom of heaven. We are told that we must be reborn of the Spirit. And that doesn't appear to be something that we just sit by and wait for it to happen. We are told to lay down our lives. We are told to sow to the Spirit. And so if we have ears, if we have eyes, if we are able to respond to the within, we have come to a place where I have no body, no physical mortal form, becomes a major challenge to us. We're either going to take that and do something with it, or we're going to tuck it conveniently away for future reference when we feel more up to it. As for me, I know where my work is, and whoever is working in the same direction will have to face the fact now that from this moment forward, if we have physical bodies in our consciousness, we will show forth physical problems in those bodies. If we prefer to say, I am a follower of Christ, a true disciple, we may walk in the world and never let anyone know we don't have a physical body, but in our own self we must know, I never had a physical body, and I'm not in one now. And I must act accordingly. I must live in my consciousness. And then whatever occurs in that visible concept called physical body will simply be a reflex action or an automatic action overflowing from that activity of the Holy Ghost which overshadows me. The world will still see physical bodies as they did of Jesus, but that's not our concern. Our concern is that we cannot walk in the invisible kingdom here and now in a mortal form. And so we have to give up the body image. We have to recognize it for what it is. Once having made the admission to self, we find that we have been conditioned so long that the denial of having a physical body, at first, though strange, the reconditioning begins, and we begin to get a glimpse of the meaning of regeneration. First, in the physical form, learning it's an image instead, and then the beginning of regeneration. Many subtle things happen in the body then. The image is changed in very subtle ways. It becomes less dependent on other concepts. It begins to drink of the hidden manna. It begins to live as a perfect outer expression of a new enlightened consciousness which is making even the body image appear new. Now you know nobody can do this job for us. And you know it's quite different than pretty words and inspiring thoughts. It's really work. It's conscious work, knowing that everywhere I look, no matter what appears, I must take everyone I see out of their own body image in my own consciousness. Everywhere is the perfect immortal body. Everywhere. Behind the forest, behind the river, behind the crowd. And that perfect immortal body everywhere is mine. I claim it. It will never die, and it is I. It is here and it is there. And just as if you were to cut your arm, forces would begin instantly to repair it, and a scab would form over the cut. You wouldn't consciously do that. The same happens in the immortal body. We saw it in Jesus. Instead of a cut arm, over there somebody was hungry, but instantly the immortal body pressed forth the food for those hungry people to eat. Over here somebody else had another problem, but instantly the immortal body repaired itself there. Always, the immortal body is perfect behind the visible, and in the recognition of it, it repairs the mental concept we entertain about it. That same immortal body will work through grace just as a scab is formed over a little wound in your arm, if you're in the consciousness of it. And that's how the needs are met. We're enlarging our awareness now to a body that is not finite, that is not even limited to this century. It's not finite in any way. And that body that you live in is living everywhere now. All things are possible to you as you know this. This will ultimately break the bubble of mortality. We'll find much corroborating evidence about this in the Bible. We'll probably look at some of those passages after a while. Let's be still for a moment. Let's look at 2 Corinthians 5. We know that if our earthly house of this tabernacle were dissolved, we have a building of God. An house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. Now he's talking about our immortal self, our immortal body, eternal in the heavens. For in this we groan earnestly, desiring to be clothed upon with our house which is from heaven. If so be that being clothed we shall not be found naked. For we know that we are in this tabernacle, we do groan, being burdened, not for that we would be unclothed, but that clothed upon, mortality might be swallowed up of life. And so dropping the body concept, flesh and blood, of limitation, of finitude, of a temporary self, knowing this is not us, and accepting our permanent self as ever present, we are truly swallowing up death by changing out of concept into reality. Death is swallowed up of life. This is a place where you take things like this into contemplation until they're really digested, until you can say, I understand that. As long as I live in a temporary body, I will be nothing more than a mortal creature, not the child of God. But life is immortal and must have its own immortal body, not temporary, not transient, not finite. And I accept beyond the level of my perception that infinite immortal body here and now, the body of life, not the body of death. Until you begin to feel the scope of your own being. You're changing garments. You're putting on the garment of immortality, the truth of being. Then he says, for we now he that hath wrought us for the selfsame thing is God, who also has given us the earnest of his Spirit. Therefore we are always confident, knowing that while we are at home in the body, we are absent from the Lord. While in the mortal sense of body, we're absent from the Lord. And then he makes this statement now that we understand, for we walk by faith, not by sight. In the form, the mortal form, we're walking by sight. We see it and we say, that's my body. But the child of God doesn't walk by sight in the body that he sees by sight, but walks by faith in the body that he does not see, in the immortal body. The body of spirit is the immortal body. The mortal body is the body of matter, which is a concept about the body of spirit. We do not have two bodies. And we are not changing a material body to a spiritual body. We are recognizing that our only body is pure, perfect, immortal spirit now. And we can see this body as an image entertained while we were getting to know the truth of our body. We are confident, I say, and willing rather to be absent from this body and to be present with the Lord. Wherefore we labor that whether present or absent, we may be accepted of him, for we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ. And that means we must ultimately come to the place where we accept Christhood. There's nothing else we can be. Whatever else we are other than Christhood is a concept. It isn't us, and it must ultimately be exposed as concept, for it must die. Only Christ is life. We must all come to the judgment seat of Christ. Each must come to the place where now Christ, I am, is accepted. With everything that it implies, that I have the Christ body and the Christ mind here and now. And that I must learn to live in it consciously, rejecting all else. And you'll see as you live in the Christ mind and body consciously, this shows forth visibly as an improved concept called physical body. We must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that everyone may receive the things done in his body according to what he hath done, whether it be good or bad. We are going to reap precisely that which we sow in our consciousness. Now I think it's very clear then that there must come this point of changing to accept the rebirth or the true body. Now we have here in the same 5th chapter of 2 Corinthians the following statement: "Wherefore henceforth know we no man after the flesh." That includes us. But rather after the immortal self. Yea, though we have known Christ after the flesh, and this is something I wish we could put on a big sign in front of every church in the world. Though we have known Christ after the flesh, yet now henceforth know we him no more. We have thought of Jesus as a person on this earth called the Son of God, doing miracles. We have known him after the flesh. And we've even said they crucified that flesh, and it wasn't there. Henceforth know we not Christ after the flesh, but as the invisible Spirit, the immortal self, never crucified, never even born, let alone dying. Yea, though we have known Christ after the flesh, yet now henceforth know we him no more. Therefore, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things are become new. All things are of God, who hath reconciled us to himself by Jesus Christ, and hath given to us the ministry of reconciliation. So we are reconciled to God as we accept the immortal body, as we recognize that the teaching was, I, standing before you visibly as Jesus, am the immortal body of God called Christ. That light I am, and ye are that light. Deny thyself, deny thy mortal body. Pick up thy cross. Accept your identity as that immortal body, and follow me. Follow me right through the crucifixion of that mortal body, and discover that you never were in it. You are now the resurrected self. You are now the ascended self. You are now the perfect immortal body of God. There is no other. There never was. Now what is a sickness then? What is a pain? What is a problem? What is any form of discord that you know? The belief that you are this mortal body. That's all. And the belief that you are this mortal body is your rejection of the Christ body and the Christ mind. Your rejection of God as the allness. Your subconscious belief perhaps that God made other bodies than his own. That God made other lives than his own. That God made forms that could die or be sick. And you know God made no form that could be sick. You don't have to concern yourself about the possibility of punishment, when you know that only perfection exists. You know that punishment is a lie. Do you see then what cleansing the temple meant? To completely rout the money changers from all thought until your thought is pure knowledge that I and the Father are one immortal body. Not the Father is more immortal and I am mortal. That would be two. Thou seest me, thou seest the Father. I and the Father are one in that claim of immortality now, spirit now, perfection now. You can even watch any form of activity that is encountered by the body image and place your faith in reality as higher and more important than whatever appears in the body image. That's the degree of fidelity asked of us to walk in the kingdom of God, however difficult it may be. That should be clear to us all, and that is what we should work on until there is some degree of acceptance within. Perhaps a great resurging determination to make possible this regeneration out of dying form into living light, eternal as the Father, to be crowned with the light, immaculately self-conceived. This is the Immaculate Conception. It isn't something you attain, it's something you accept because God is. And beside God, there is no other. Here are some of the important statements in this chapter by Joel. Within each of us is the perfect self that has never fallen, has never left heaven, and therefore can never gain heaven. It is already a state of heaven. It is already living the perfect life, the spiritual life, the Christ life that can never be crucified, never resurrected, never ascended. It is already the Son of God, the Christ within us. It has been called hidden manna, pearl of great price, the robe of immortality. Now, you know, the world is waiting, like waiting for the sunrise, waiting for the return, waiting for the millennium. And Christ is all that is here now. Who's doing the waiting? The false sense of a mortal self, which is denying Christ here now. Now, the opposite of denying is accepting Christ here now. And then we're not waiting. It's an end of waiting. There's nothing to wait for. If you wait, you're pushing away your own self. This pushes you beyond the mental acceptance into the livingness, into opening up that bud of the soul. For no human mind can accept Christhood. The human mind must die, just as the human body sense must be relinquished to live in the self. We are changing from mortality, which was a concept, into immortality, which is our present reality. And we don't hold on to the concept. Our spiritual goal is not developing a self that has no problems. That's what the world's trying to do. That's not our spiritual goal. Rather, it is dying to the self that has the problems. And even dying to the self that does not have the problems, and being reborn to our already perfected self. Now, Joel lays it on the line there. It's the acceptance of your present perfect immortal self, which is the infinite way, not the attaining or the maturing or the developing or the becoming, but rather the acceptance of what you are. We're not interested in improving good humanhood to better humanhood. That's just a reflex action of your spiritual selfhood realized. Yes, we would rather see people honest than lying, but that isn't our infinite way. We're not interested in improving bad humanhood. That too is a reflex action from spiritual awareness. We work always in the realm of cause rather than improving effect. Sowing to the spirit, recognizing the spiritual reality instead of being decoyed by the flesh, by matter, by mortality, by the temporary, by the perishable. Now then, if you're recognizing people, you are in a human concept of yourself, because the human concept always recognizes the human concept. And as long as you're recognizing people, you are rejecting your immortal self. There's a place where Jesus tells the disciples that if they keep recognizing people, they're going to perish. It was that Tower of Siloam where a certain number were killed, and the disciples wanted to know what they were being punished for. Well, they weren't being punished at all. And if you keep seeing somebody being punished, you're seeing a human concept, and you will perish as they do, he says. Until you are seeing that only the reality of the immortal self is there, you are in the mortal self. Like will recognize like. That's how you can tell, to some degree, where you are. There is no individual such as I am seeing in my mind's eye, says Joel. There is no such self. There is no such person, because he about whom I am thinking is not the image and likeness of God. That is not God created. That is the false sense of self that I am entertaining about that person. Now that's following through on your body is the temple of the living God. And so is the body of your neighbor, the temple of the living God. And the temple of the living God is never physical, it's spiritual. And when you see your neighbor as a physical person with your eyes, you're living by sight and not by faith. Faith says that is the temple of the living God. The Father said so. The Son said so. And even Paul, here in 1 Corinthians 3:16, know ye not that ye are the temple of God, that the Spirit of God dwelleth in you? Well, the Spirit of God that dwelleth in you is the temple, and that is your immortal self. And that is the immortal self of your neighbor. And if you see a person there, without making the conscious awareness recognition that that is the invisible temple of the living God, you are living in a mortal sense of this world. And as Jesus reminded his disciples, if you're still seeing people, you perish just like they do. You must be consistent in your acknowledgement of Spirit everywhere. You might call it self-recognition in all persons and in all things. Everywhere you recognize your invisible self. It doesn't matter who or what. This self-recognition in all things is the way you are claiming that you are the universal self. The universal immortal body being you. You claim it everywhere. It doesn't matter what you see there. It is your invisible immortal self that is there. And you find that when you're true to that, you have the spiritual power functioning in your experience. Now, of course, we are trapped by our senses. We see forms. We have lived with forms. We have known forms. We have reacted to forms. But only because we have been conditioned through the ages. And we have been turned away from our immortal self, our immortal body, which is ever present though invisible because it is incorporeal. And so we say, over there is a person, over there is a horse, over there is a cat. And that's only true if a human being is seeing. You might say there are two channels, Channel 1 and Channel 2. Channel 1, the first chapter of Genesis, the perfect spiritual universe. Channel 2, what is called the fallen world, unaware of its identity, immortality. Channel 2. And if we're in Channel 2, what do we see? We see people. We see animals. We see vegetation. We see matter, because that's the nature of Channel 2. And because we are in a material concept, we see everything materially. But switch to Channel 1. And lo and behold, there's no crooked arm, there's no cripple, there's no hunger, there's no famine, there's no sickness, there's no mortality. There are no human beings in Channel 1. They're only the children of God, the one perfect Christ, appearing as many forms of light. One called Jesus, one called Buddha, one called Mary, one called John, one called Tom, another called Dick, and a third called Harry. It matters not. When you're in Channel 1, everyone is the invisible light to you. If you see them mortally, you're in Channel 2. If you see them immortally, you're in Channel 1. And you can tell where you are by the way you see them. We want to live in Channel 1. Channel 2 is the imitation of reality, without existence or substance or law. There is no individual such as I am seeing in my mind's eye. And that's his statement. This is a false sense of self I am entertaining about that person. And here we go again. Your body is not a physical one. Your humanhood is no more than the manifestation of what you really are spiritually. The night is like day. But all of the very best humanhood possible has not even a trace of the spiritual in it. Even the best humanhood has not even a trace of the spiritual in it. You have to go beyond humanhood, beyond the best humanhood ever known, before you find spiritual identity. You must pierce the veil of illusion that separates you from the realization of your immortal self. Now, he didn't say attain it. He didn't say wait for it. He didn't say it's coming in the millennium. He said pierce the veil of illusion that separates you from it. It's here. Your immortal self is here. And what's the veil of illusion? Nothing but belief. Belief pounded into us, even by those who believe they represent God on earth. But God is on earth. We don't need representatives. God is on earth. The kingdom of God is your being. Your immortal self is God. Now, who represents God? If God is all. God is the only living being. Who is going to represent the only living being? That being you are. That being I am. This is the recognition and acceptance of immortality. Here and now. The body of God is the body of you, and there is no other body. The human sense cannot manipulate or use that body. The human sense dies to itself. And then you find yourself walking in that body of God, which is infinite consciousness. You're like the Son of Man he spoke of, who has no place to lay his head. There is no place. There's just infinite consciousness. And you let it live itself without a human interfering, without a concept trying to run reality. This is so totally different than good Christians sponging up more words. It is being a living Christ as the immortal self in God. The acceptance of his word as your word. Call no man your father. The immortal self of God is yourself. All that I have is thine. And then Joel says this: I already am the resurrection. I am the ascended man. I am the perfected one. By virtue of my oneness with the Father, I already am clothed with immortality. Now that's the I of you, declaring, I am clothed with immortality. I already am eternal being. My oneness, that original relationship given me in the beginning, this establishes me in heaven. It's all acceptance. And while accepting, you're pushing away the false concepts that have separated you from your own immortal self. Veil by veil is being rented until we come to pure being. In Corinthians, Paul continues with something rather interesting. If any man defile the temple of God, which is your immortal body, him shall God destroy. Now you see how karma works. If you refuse to live in your immortal self, your immortality, which is automatic destruction because mortality dies. For the temple of God is holy, which temple ye are. Let no man deceive himself. If any man among you seemeth to be wise in this world, let him become a fool, that he may be wise. For the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God. For it is written, He taketh the wise in their own craftiness. And again, the Lord knoweth the thoughts of the wise, that they are vain. Therefore let no man glory in men, for all things are yours. All things are yours, whether Paul or Apollos, or Cephas, or the world, or life, or death, or things present, or things to come, all are yours. And ye are Christ's, and Christ is God, is God's. Now, these great spiritual teachers who have blazed the trails by living them, willing to take the consequences of what they knew, willing to depart from the known pathways, the safe pathways, they've proved for us our task is much simpler than theirs. We're not going out into the darkness when we know there's light there. We're not going and walking on water when we know our immortal body is there. Our path is so relatively simple compared to the trailblazers that we can only say there really have been more than one way shower for us, many way showers. Many way showers all telling us that the real way shower is our own self. For who walked out there as Paul but yourself, the Christ? Who walked out there as Jesus but yourself, the Christ? Everywhere is yourself. Everywhere is your immortal being. It's waiting for the fullness of you to come up out of the lie. Now, we're not going to be vain or wise in our conceits. We're not going to ask questions when we are given all of the answers even before we speak a question. We're going to try to live our immortal self, knowing that angels of light are always helping us. The Father knoweth in secret. As you turn to that inner spirit, all the questions you might have had are answered. As you commune, as you trust, as you really give yourself a total yielding of you to that inner spirit, you're merely leaving the false to accept the true. Never has the Spirit turned away from an individual who seeks to surrender to it. It cannot. And then the light, which is ever present, which can never leave you, dispels the illusion you had of a darkness. There's never a darkness. Not in darkest Africa is there darkness. It's always an illusion. It's an inability, an unwillingness to accept the light that is ever present. Because we are vain in our conceits. We think we know something. We do not have the wisdom to know that as human beings we know nothing. And the moment you put yourself on the tide of spirit, knowing you know nothing, you are displaying your wisdom. Spirit is always self-fulfilling when you have confidence and a willingness to lay aside all concepts of your human selfhood and trust that Spirit to be what it is. Joel says, you will now see him ascended before the crucifixion, ascended in consciousness to the realization of his true identity. We must remember he has said, I am the way. I and the Father are one. Thou seest me, thou seest him that sent me. And Joel's understanding is this. Now he is not a man with a problem. He's not a man with a future. He's not a man with a mission. But rather, now he is the image and likeness of God. And the other self has dropped away, and his spiritual self is shining through. Those are the words that you will be saying within yourself. I was ascended before the crucifixion. The false self, which I am learning to crucify in consciousness, could never prevent my immortal self from being here. The ascension was never necessary, for I always was the child of God. There's only ascension above the lie to reveal that I always was the ascended one. So Joel sees Jesus there as ascended before the crucifixion, as you no doubt have understood, perhaps before you read it here. The complete ascension of Jesus Christ was completed before the physical crucifixion, and that's why it appeared in the material world. Your child is the same I that you are. Commune with the spiritual identity of that child. Draw forth the Christ identity and watch the change that takes place. Now this is true of children, and you'll find it amazingly true of pets. When you have been able to accept the spiritual identity of the pet, just like a child, you will draw it forth, and as Joel says, watch the difference. Let's conclude with this thought. Be lifted into a temple not made with hands, a consciousness not made with hands, a body not made with hands. Learn to shut out the physical body and to go right through any appearance to the I at the center of your being. We go right to the I. We stand in the I, not in the physical body. We don't mind if the world sees a physical body, but we're standing in the I. That's where our consciousness is. That's where we know ourselves. And this I is not in this body. This I is not in this city or in this country. It is not in time and it is not in space. It is infinite and it is eternal. And that is where we are resting in consciousness. And that is our temple, not made with hands. That is our life, eternal. Then the full power of the living Spirit of God is pulsing through your complete being and will appear where needed in every possible way. But mostly you are preceding the end of a mortal body with the realization and the livingness in the immortal body. And for you there will be transfiguration, not death. Transition, not death. Translation, not death. The transfiguration will be the living in that body which was displayed as the infinite body of light. Never confined, never entombed, never finitized, and you will know it is your body. This transfiguration must take place in your consciousness before the end of this mortal body. That's why it's in the Bible. It is an experience you must go through. Every experience of Christ Jesus is one that we will go through. That's why they're there. In the highest churches around this world today, in orthodoxy, there are very few who are attempting to do what you are attempting to do now. They are living in the Old Testament, in the days of good and evil, in the days when God was going to punish His children for being sinners, and they are calling themselves Christian without the Christ. We're not making that mistake anymore, and this is going to be a turning for those religions, just as it is for us. For the immortal body that you recognize as yours is the immortal body of everyone in every church in the world today. The same body. And we must recognize it in them, or we lose it ourselves. We must destroy this temple and let I raise it up in 3 days. This body concept is the temple we destroy. We crucify it. We dismiss it from our belief. And I has promised to raise it up in 3 days. It'll certainly be a different body when raised up in 3 days. It certainly will be the divine image and likeness, because I will raise it up in 3 days. That command, that demand, that challenge has been in the Bible for you all these years, to destroy this temple that you have called your body. Not with bombs or bullets, but by a reconception, a rebirth, to come back to where you were as the Immaculate Self, in your knowledge. And then I will put forth a new body, conceived in the Father, an immortal body, a body that will never see death. Just before Jesus said, "Destroy this body and I will raise it up again," just before he said that, he cleansed the temple. And that is what we must do before we destroy this temple. We must cleanse it, purify it, only with truth. Every form of concept that we have must be eliminated to make way for divine thought, pure thought, pure truth. And then the body of truth will be raised up. John put that at the very beginning of his gospel for a reason, because he knew only the purification of the mental temple can bring forth the pure divine body. Next week, I think, is an act of commitment. And maybe that's exactly where we're going right this minute, to an act of commitment. If you can spare a few minutes, let's just rest in the silence. We thank the Father. This has been a very joyful meeting. Thank you.